My name's Amy and I'm a rehabilitation therapist at Vita Health Group. And today I'm going to be showing you an example of what is to be expected from our low-level back classes. So we run two lots of back-focused exercise classes, so a high-level version and a low-level version. In the low-level version, the thing that makes it differ is that we do not do any work on the floor. So getting on and off the floor is not something that we would look at in this class due to it being more inclusive for those with less reduced mobility, balance, things like that. So I'm going to be taking you through about 8 exercises as well as a warm-up and a cool-down. In the class, you would complete these 8 exercises, have a break in the middle, and then repeat them a second time. As with all of our exercise classes, there is no set amount of reps you have to complete in the time or anything like that. Everything is to be done within your own capability. So we're going to start with a warm-up, which is going to consist of some marching on the spot and some gentle stretching. So let's start with some marching, obviously getting the fingers warm, the wrists warmed up. Fantastic, all sorts of stuff like that. Marching on the spot. And we would do this for about a minute or so before we had a bit of a stretch. So the stretches I would focus on in the back class would mainly be catered towards the lower back, but also a little bit of mid-back mobility as well. So feet shoulder width apart, nice soft knees, tucking your chin into your chest, and you're just looking at reaching down to the floor. As far as is comfortable, you work in a range that's comfortable for you. Falling down towards the floor and holding that stretch. Coming back up. The next one we're going to do would be the opposite way. So we're going to bring ourselves into a gentle back bend, again working within a range of motion that's comfortable for you. Bringing ourselves into that back bend here. Holding for a few seconds. Back to the middle. We're going to bring ourselves into a little bit of side flexion. Holding for a few seconds. Back to the middle and bringing ourselves the other way. The last one before we get going will be hands across the chest. We're going to do some rotational movements. So rotating one way, back to the middle, rotating the other way, back to the middle. So the first exercise we're going to look at in the class is to do with the hips. So a lot of back pain comes from the fact that our hips are a little bit weak and our muscles that sort of move and support the hips, so our glute muscles, our bottom muscles are a little bit weak as well. So the first exercise, we're going to bring ourselves next to a chair, which is always going to be next to you for balance. You're going to stand on one leg, and what we're going to do is we're going to keep the other leg nice and straight, keep the core tight, bring the leg to the front, to the side, and to the back. To the front, to the side, and to the back. And when we do single leg exercises, we tend to do them for about 30 seconds each side. When we do double leg exercises or just whole body exercises, they will be for about a minute. Obviously this video is a sample, so they might be slightly shorter. And then after a while, we're going to switch to the other leg. So moving that chair and switching to the other leg, to the front, to the side, to the back. Fantastic. What we're looking for here is a really nice tall posture, nice engaged core. We don't want to be compensating and leaning to the side or anything like that. We want the only thing to be moving to be the hip joint. Brilliant. When we've done 30 seconds of that, we would then move on to keeping within the same theme of the hips, but we're going to move on to a slightly different direction. So our hip flexion, so a bit of a marching action. So we can either do 2 lots. We either make it a little bit faster, make it more of a conditioning exercise, or we can make it slightly more of a balance and mobility exercise. So sometimes I slow it down and say standing up nice and tall, holding the chair if you need to, bringing that knee up, holding for a few seconds and coming back down. Bringing that knee up, holding for a few seconds and coming back down. And either is a benefit. The first one is more of a general conditioning, a general sort of workout for the lower limbs and the hips. The second one focuses a little bit more on your core strength and balance. So both really useful attributes for day-to-day life and rehab. Fantastic. So moving into our next exercise, we come into a seated position, and very similar to some of the work we did during the warm-up, but we make it slightly more mobility focused rather than stretch focused. There is definitely benefits to both, which is why they are all included in this sort of class. So sitting up nice and tall in the chair, hands across the chest, and we're going to work our way through some sort of rotational motions. Rotating this way, back to the middle, that way, back to the middle. This way, the middle, that way, to the middle. And these rotational motions are really beneficial for that mid-back mobility, allowing those muscles to contract and support the spine. Also utilising some core strength to keep that posture up lovely and tall as well. Rotating, and we complete this for about a minute. Fantastic. After that one, we move on to something a little bit, again, similar to the warm-up, but more of a mobility. So coming down here, arms down to the side, and we're looking slightly at a side flexion sort of motion. So coming down to the side, up to the middle, coming down to the side, up to the middle. Ensuring that I keep my upper body up nice and tall still, and then I'm not tilting or hunching at all. So I'm keeping myself in this position, coming down, back up. Brilliant, and that is our side flexion. So again, working on the mid to low back, this one can be a little bit more tender. So again, ensuring that we're just working in a range of motion that is comfortable. Brilliant. Our next exercise is a little bit more stretch focused. So what we're going to do is we're going to stay in this seated position, and we're going to bring our legs slightly wide so that we've got a bit of a gap. Similar to how we did in the warm-up when we stood up and reached the floor, we're going to do the same thing but seated. So what it does is it reduces how far you've got to go to the floor. So it's quite a nice starting point if that standing flexion is a little bit difficult for you. What we're going to do is gently tuck our chin to our chest to make sure that our spine is lovely and neutral, and bringing down to the floor as far as is comfortable, and obviously aiming to touch the floor if we can, but equally if you cannot get to that, it's not a problem. You're going to hold yourself there for a few seconds, allow your hips to open up a little bit and allow your low back to relax, and then you're ever so gently going to come back up. We're going to repeat that a couple of times, again for about a minute's work in the class. Calming down. Again. Brilliant. One more time. Calming down. Up again. Brilliant. So the last one we're going to do on the chair before we start to do the last two that are a little bit more mobile, we're going to be doing a leg lift. So this is quite useful for any sort of sciatica sufferers or anything like that. We stood up nice and tall in the chair, and what we're doing is bringing the leg straight with a pointed toe and then flexing that toe upwards. Down, back. Exactly the same on the other leg, ensuring that posture stays lovely and tall, and just incorporating those ankle motions as well. Brilliant. Cross, up, down. Brilliant. What this does is this is a slight variation on what we call a nerve glide. So when that sciatic nerve is a little bit compressed, this is one of the motions that can actually help provide a little bit of relief from those symptoms by putting a stretch on the hamstrings and also strengthening the quad muscles as well. Brilliant. Fantastic. And again, it completes that for about a minute. So our second to last on the activities is our seated abduction. So within the class, they might have some resistance bands to give you, which you would pop round the top of your knees. In absence of that, all we would do is pop our feet on the floor in a normal seated position. Hands go on the outside of your legs. And what happens is you go inwards, and as you bring your knees outwards, you're going to apply a force against your knees, so it's a little bit harder. Brilliant. So this is a great strengthener for the hips. Fantastic. And also involves the core with that sort of tall posture as well. Brilliant. Repeat about a minute of those in your own speed with as much resistance as you feel you can manage. Brilliant. The last exercise we're going to do in the back class is a sit to stand. So really functional, fantastic for building those habits at home, gets us out of habits of pushing ourselves off chairs or pulling ourselves off of things. So what we're going to aim for is sitting up lovely and tall in that chair. I always like to have my hands away from the chair to sort of remove any temptation to push myself up. We don't want to become dependent on our upper limbs to help us stand up. So hands are going to be in front of you like this. And essentially what you're going to do is bring yourself into a standing position by driving up from the heels and coming back down. Sitting up lovely and tall, driving up from the heels, coming back down. Brilliant. What's important here is that we don't let our knees cave in at all. So we don't want to be going this way. We want to keep our knees outwards, because what that does is it activates our glutes, our bottom muscles, which are really key sort of strengtheners and helping us stand up. Again, we're going to do about a minute of that in your own speed at your own time. And it's a good habit to get into, like I say, off of soft surfaces, so like sofas or even sort of dining table chairs. Allows you to sort of fire through the right muscles and take that load off of your back. Brilliant. And we're going to do that for about a minute. So that's all 8 exercises. There will be a variation, but that's just a sample of a couple of examples that you might see within the class. Consisting of a warm down, we would complete some of the same stretches, so whether that's in a seated position or a standing position. So we go back to this sort of lumbar stretch here, holding for a few seconds and ensuring that you're properly cooled down. That's just an example of some of the stuff that you could expect in a low back class. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, your class lead will always be happy to talk through and answer those for you. They can also alter any exercises to keep you safe and to keep you slightly more comfortable if any of them are causing you pain at all. It's a very sort of easy and malleable class in terms of the exercises can be adapted to suit your capabilities at any time. So that's just a sample of the exercise classes, and we hope to see you there.